Okay, chapters 9 and 10. So remember that he's working on that big tree, the biggest tree in the woods, because they've put the raccoon up the tree and he promised his dogs that he would get it. By late evening, the happy tune I had been whistling was forgotten. My back throbbed like a stone bruise. The muscles in my legs and arms started quivering and jerking. I couldn't gulp enough air to cool the burning heat in my lungs. My strength was gone. I could go no further. I sat down and called my dogs to me. With tears in my eyes, I told them that I just couldn't cut the big tree down. I was trying hard to make them understand when I heard someone coming. It was Grandpa in his buggy. I'm sure no one in the world can understand a young boy like his grandfather can. He drove up with the twinkle in his eyes and a smile on his whiskery old face. "Hello, how are you getting along?" he boomed. "Not so good, Grandpa," I said. "I don't think I can cut it down. It's just too big. I guess I'll have to give up." "Give up?" Grandpa barked. "Now, I don't want to hear you say that. No, sir, that's the last thing I want to hear. Don't ever start anything you can't finish." "I don't want to give up, Grandpa," I said, "but it's just too big and my strength's gone. I'll give out." "Course you are," he said. "You've been going at it all wrong. To do work like that, a fellow needs plenty of rest and food in his stomach." "How am I going to get that, Grandpa?" I asked. "I can't leave the tree. If I do, the coon'll get away." "No, he won't," Grandpa said. "That's what I came down here for. I'll show you how to keep that coon in the tree." He walked around the big sycamore, looking up. He whistled and said, "Boy, this is a big one, all right." "Yes, it is, Grandpa," I said. "It's the biggest one in the river bottoms." Grandpa started chuckling. "That's all right," he said. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." "How are you going to make that coon stay in the tree, Grandpa?" I asked. With a proud look on his face, he said, "That's another one for my coon hunting tricks. Learned it when I was a boy. We'll keep him there all right. Oh, I don't mean we can keep him there for always, but he'll stay for 4 or 5 days. That is until he gets so hungry he just has to come down." "I don't need that much time," I said. "I'm pretty sure I can have it down by tomorrow night." Grandpa looked at the cut. "I don't know," he said. "Even though it is halfway down, you must remember you've been cutting on half of one night and one day. You might make it, but it's going to take a lot of chopping." "If I get a good night's sleep," I said, "and a couple of meals under my belt, I can do a lot of chopping." Grandpa laughed. "Speaking of meals," he said, "your ma is having chicken and dumplings for supper. Now we don't want to miss that, so let's get busy." "What do you want me to do, Grandpa?" I asked. "Well, let's see," he said. "First thing we'll need is some sticks about 5 feet long. Take your axe, go over to the canebrake, and get us 6 of them." I hurried to do what Grandpa wanted, all that time wondering what in the world he was going to do. How could he keep the coon in the tree? When I came back, he was taking some old clothes from the buggy. "Take this stocking cap," he said. "Fill it about half full of grass and leaves." Does anybody know what he's doing? While I was doing this, Grandpa walked over and started looking up at the tree. "You're pretty sure he's in the hollow limb, aren't you?" he asked. "He's there all right, Grandpa," I said. "There's no other place he could be. I've looked all over it, and there's no other hollow anywhere." "Well, in that case," Grandpa said, "we better put a man along about here." "What man?" I asked in surprise. "The one we're about to make," he said. "To us, it'll be a scarecrow, but to the coon, it'll be a man." So they're making a scarecrow. Knowing too well how smart coons were, right away I began to lose confidence. "I don't see how anything like that can keep a coon in a tree," I said. "It'll keep him there all right," Grandpa said. "Like I told you before, they're curious little devils. He'll poke his head out of that hole, see that man standing there, and he won't dare come down. It'll take him 4 or 5 days to figure out that it isn't a real honest-to-goodness man. By that time, it'll be too late. You'll have his hide tacked in a smokehouse wall." So do y'all think really that a raccoon would really not know that that is not a real man? The more I thought about it, the more I believed it. And then there was the serious look on Grandpa's face. That was all it took. I was firmly convinced. I started laughing. The more I thought about it, the funnier it got. Great big laughing tears rolled down my cheek. "What's so funny?" Grandpa asked. "Don't you believe it'll work?" "Sure it'll work, Grandpa," I said. "I know it will. I was thinking, those coons aren't half as smart as they think they are they?" We both had a good laugh at this. With the sticks and some baling wire, Grandpa made a frame that looked almost like a gingerbread man. On this he put an old pair of pants and a red sweater. We stuffed the loose, flabby clothes with grass and leaves. He wired the stocking cap head in place and stepped back to inspect his work. Well, what do you think of it? He asked. If it had a face, I said, you couldn't tell it from a real man. We can fix that, Grandpa chuckled. He took a stick and dug some black grease from one of his hubcaps on the buggy. I stood and watched while he applied his artistic touch. In the stocking cap head, he made 2 mean-looking eyes, a crooked nose, and the ugliest mouth I had ever seen. Well, what do you think of that? He asked. Looks pretty good, huh? Laughing fit to kill and talking all at the same time, I told him that I wouldn't blame the coon if he stayed in the tree until Gabriel blew his horn. He won't stay that long, Grandpa chuckled, but he'll stay long enough for you to cut down that tree. That's all I want, I said. We better get going, Grandpa said. It's getting late, and we don't want to miss that supper. I was so stiff and sore, he had to help me to the buggy seat. I called to my dogs. Little Ann came, but not willingly. Old Dan refused to leave the tree. Come on, boy, I coaxed. Let's go home and get something to eat. We'll come back tomorrow. He bowed his head and looked the other way. Come on, I scolded. We can't sit here all night. This hurt his feelings. He walked around behind the big sycamore and hid. Well, I'll be darned, Grandpa said as he jumped down from the buggy. He knows that coon's there, and he doesn't want to leave it. You've got a coon hound there, and I mean a good one. He picked old Dan up in his arms and set him in the buggy. All the way home, I had to hold on to his collar to keep him from jumping out and going back to the tree. So old Dan does not want to leave the tree. As our buggy wound its way up through the bottoms, Grandpa started talking. You know, Billy, he said, about this tree chopping of yours. I think it's all right. In fact, I think it would be a good thing if all young boys had to cut down a big tree like that once in their life. If it does something for them. It gives them determination and willpower. That's a good thing for a man to have. It goes a long way in his life. The American people have a lot of it. They have proved that all through history, but they could do a lot more of it. I couldn't see the determination and willpower that Grandpa was talking about very clearly. All I could see was a big sycamore tree, a lot of chopping, and the height of a ringtail coon, and I was determined to have. As we reached the house, Mama came out. Right away, she started checking me over. Are you all right? She asked. Sure, Mama, I said. What makes you think something's wrong with me? Well, I didn't know, she said. The way you acted when you got down from that buggy, I thought maybe you were hurt. He's just a little sore and stiff from all that chopping, Grandpa said, but he'll be all right. That'll go away soon. After Mama saw that there was no broken bones or legs chopped off, she smiled and said, I never know anymore. I guess I'll have to get used to it. Papa hollered from the porch. Come on in. We've been waiting for supper on you. We're having chicken and dumplings, Mama beamed, and I cooked them especially for you. During the meal, I told Grandpa I didn't think that the coon in the big tree was the same one my dogs had been trailing at first. What makes you think that? He asked. I told how the coon had followed us and how little Ann had seen or heard the other coon. I figured he had just walked up on my dogs before he realized it. A smile spread all over Grandpa's face. Chuckling, he said, It doesn't look that way. It does look that way, but it wasn't. No, Billy, it was the same coon. They're much too smart to ever walk up a hound like that. He pulled a trick, and it was a good one. In fact, it'll fool 9 out of 10 dogs. Well, what did he do, Grandpa? I asked. I'm pretty sure he didn't cross the river. So, how did he work it? Grandpa pushed the dishes back and used his fork as a pencil. He drew an imaginary line on the tablecloth. It's called the backtracking trick, he said. Here's how he worked it. He climbed the water oak, but he only went up at about 15 or 20 feet. He then turned around and came back down his same tracks. He backtracked on his original trail for a way. When he heard your dogs coming, he leaped far up the side on the nearest tree and climbed up. He was in that tree all the time your dogs were searching for the lost trail. After everything had quieted down, he figured they had given up. That's when he came down, and that's when little Ann either heard or saw him. Pointing the fork at me, Grandpa said very seriously, You mark my word, Billy. In no time at all, that little Ann will know every trick a coon can pull. Because remember, little Ann is smart. You know, Grandpa, I said, she wouldn't bark treed at the water oak like old Dan did. Of course she wouldn't, he said. She knew he wasn't there. Why, I never heard of such a thing, Mama said. I'd no idea coons were that smart. Why, for all anyone knows, he may not be in that big tree at all. Maybe he pulled another trick. It'll be a shame if Billy cut down and found that there was no coon in it. Oh, he's there, Mama, I hastily replied. I know he is. They were right on his tail when he went up. Besides, Little Ann was bawling her head off when I came to them. Of course he's there, Grandpa said. They were crowding him too closely. He didn't have time to pull another trick. Grandpa left soon after supper, saying to me, I'll be back down in a few days and I want to see that coon hide. I thanked him for helping me and walked out to the buggy with him. Oh, I almost forgot, he said. I heard there was a fad back in the New England states. Seems like everyone is going crazy for coonskin coats. Now, if this is true, I look for the price of coon hides to take a jump. I was happy to hear this and told my father what Grandpa had said. Papa laughed and said, well, if you can keep the coons out of the big sycamores, you might make a little money. Before I went to bed, Mama made me a hot bath. Then she rubbed me all over with some liniment that burned like fire and smelled like a civet cat. Now, I would be worried about leaving that big tree, thinking maybe the raccoon would run away. But he thinks that the scarecrow will work. It seemed like I had barely closed my eyes when Mama woke me up. Breakfast is about ready, Billy, she said.